everybody, Mike James here with you again on YouTube. We're going to talk today a little bit about defining sin. And to do that, I want to tell you a little story that happened to me. This happened to me in the workplace. I was taking a class on bias, so we had to take this particular class, and I had a colleague that came from my particular office who was there with me at this class. And we were looking at what we had biases about. And I was trying to think, because I'm kind of open-minded, what do I have a bias about? And nothing was really coming to me. And then I started to think, what about homosexual marriage? I guess I'm biased, at least from a world's perspective, on homosexual marriage because I don't believe that homosexuals should be married. Now, the reason I don't believe that is because of what the Bible tells me. So when I told my colleague there what I thought my bias was, she looked at me like I was someone out of the Middle Ages. She couldn't understand how I could not agree that homosexual marriage should be something that people should be able to do in today's day and age. Well, then I really threw her for a loop when I mentioned that not only did I think homosexual marriage was a sin, but I felt that lust in my head was a sin. I was trying to relate to her that homosexuals may take part in that type of sexual activity, but even when I get a thought in my head that is a lustful thought, that is sin also. And so I was trying to explain to her that I'm no better than individuals who are homosexuals from the standpoint that I have had lust in my brain before, which is a sin also. Now this woman was really concerned about me because she saw sin in a totally different light. She thought sin was something like killing somebody. She thought that sin was something like robbing a bank, where I see those things as being sin also, but I also see sin as being what I just mentioned to you. Now I explained to her that I got my definition of sin from the pages of the Bible, that in 1 John chapter 3 and verse 4, it says, "Whoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law." Sin is the transgression of the law. So that's why I had the belief that I did, and I guess the world would consider me biased, but obviously I don't think I'm biased. I think I'm following what God has to say on how He views the world. Now, keeping this in mind, that sin is the transgression of the law, we want to look at some nuanced examples of that as we go through our little discussion with you today. So as you can see, I have the 10 Commandments right on my shirt here today to emphasize the fact that we need to follow God's law if we are Christians and we say we have faith in this God, because this God stands for this law. He's created this law so we can have life and have it more abundantly. But there are some other views that people have around sin within the Bible, and I want to address those two other scriptures today, but I want you to think back to this original meaning of what sin is, that it is the transgression of God's law. And that'll help us understand these two other scriptures that deal with sin. One of them is over in Romans chapter 14 and verse 23. So let me quickly turn over to Romans 14 and verse 23, and I'm going to read something to you there. Listen to what it says. "And he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. For whatsoever is not of faith is sin." Now the context of this eating has to do with the fact that animals were killed and sacrificed to pagan gods during the time that the New Testament church was getting started. And some Christians felt that they should not eat this meat that had been sacrificed to a pagan god. Now, why did they have a weird feeling about this? It goes back to God's law. They knew there was a law that dealt with only having one God, have no other gods except this one God. And they felt that if this animal was sacrificed for a false god, that in some way they may be transgressing God's law against having no other gods before you. Now, the law doesn't state you can't eat the meat that has been sacrificed to these other gods, but within the conscience of these people, they had that feeling. And what the writer here is saying, that if you do have that funny feeling, then don't eat that meat, or don't do this, or don't do that, based upon this feeling you have in trying to understand God's law and follow God's precepts. But for those who felt that it was okay to eat that meat, it would be okay to them because they had faith that it was not transgressing God's law to do that. But if these two forces came together, we might need to keep in mind our brother who is seeing things in a certain way, and rather than upset them, we might not eat that meat on that particular day. That is what the principle is here that is being brought forward in this nuanced understanding of sin from this particular Scripture. Now there's another nuance that you will find in relation to sin. I'm going to give you another Scripture to think about, and this Scripture is found over in James chapter 4 and verse 17. Just to give you another little nuance here of an understanding of sin. In James chapter 4 and verse 17, we read the following: "Therefore to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it is sin." Now when you think about sin, many times we think of sins as sins of commission, something that we are doing that is breaking God's law. But what we're reading here is that it is possible to not do something and for that to be considered sin. Now, can you think of an example like this? Think about that. Let me give you one. Let's say you're walking down the street, and across the street you see a woman walking, and all of a sudden a couple of teenagers knock her down, grab her purse, and start to run with it. Would you continue walking down the street pretending that nothing happened over there? Because there is no law in the Bible that says you must go help a woman who's been knocked to the ground and her purse has been taken. But we know from the intention of the law, we know from being your brother's keeper, we know from other laws that the intent of helping out people is there within the law of God. So for you to continue walking down the street as if nothing had happened across the street would be a sin of omission. By you not acting, you are committing a sin and not helping that woman. The least you can do is go over there, help that woman, call the police, and if you're able to, chase after those individuals if you know they don't have a gun or something like that. But this is what we mean here when we say that if you know to do good and you don't do it, that you can be committing sin in that way also. So I hope this little discussion today on what sin is, the definition of sin, has helped you. And to help you even more, we have a free booklet titled, "What is Sin, Ladies and Gentlemen?" To some, pleasurable activities like card playing and dancing are sin. To others, sin is any behavior society deems unacceptable. But what does the Bible say about sin? This will give you a lot more detail than I've given you here in this little discussion. Get this, it's free of charge. All you need to do is go to our website, www.cgi.org, and you can send us an email if you like at info@cgi.org, and we'll send you free of charge the booklet, What is Sin? Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you on another edition of YouTube. Bye for now.